So if everyone's on the same page and everyone has access to the same data, they're all reviewing the same data, then people understand why decisions are being made.
Starting with collaboration helps build trust and helps give context.
Making sure that we have all the tools necessary to be able to deliver the message that we're trying to convey.
One of the benefits that I've noticed is people have higher job satisfaction.
Part of our job as a finance team is to be able to translate finance into non-finance metrics and language, bring people along and ensure that they're bought into the ways in which we're measuring success at our business.
For every problem that we face, I try to think of it from the business perspective first rather than the team perspective, and think about what is the ideal process for us to be able to accomplish our goal. Once I know what the process might be, then I'll start to think about who actually will be involved in that or who will actually do the portions of the process. And at that time, we will inevitably realize some of this will be done by finance, some by HR, some by sales. At that point, if everybody's already agreed we've come up with a really good process here, then every team can get aligned on what portion of that process do they want to own.
I think it's important to bring folks along in how you thought about things, what assumptions you're using to drive those outcomes. But I think that you also don't want to slow down. And so ensuring that folks have enough context to be able to be bought in without overwhelming anybody with too much data or complexity.
I think it's pretty clear when it's like, here's a finance and accounting type work stream, and then you have anything that crosses over into a department, they need to be involved. And you should never act on behalf of a department without their knowledge of it. I think decentralized communication makes everything very easy to ensure that you have all of the buy-in that you need from any stakeholder.
I tend to always be more on the collaborate with everybody approach, and there's always somebody on the other side of the argument arguing for why it should be a tighter group of people who are involved in decision making.
Starting with collaboration helps build trust and helps give context. And context is not only important for the individual or the FP&A professional, but it's important for the whole team. If the team or any one person on the team doesn't have context, that's going to lead to ineffective decisions or, like I mentioned earlier, analysis paralysis.
I think it's very easy to just be thinking about what something has happened or get recency biased on things, but I think having the data and falling back on the data, looking at seasonal trends is always key. So it's always something that we do look at. It's what's the year-over-year impact, what's the quarter-over-quarter impact. The data is really important, and it should generally be black and white. But I think making sure that we're always relying on the data or looking at the data is key.
I think we've actually always been fairly data-driven. What has changed is that we've grown significantly in the number of products and therefore kind of the number of metrics to track. So there's been a balancing act between figuring out which metrics are actually meaningful and material for the business versus those that are very visible but might not actually drive anything. I think the other part of Olo is we've always done a very good job of kind of having this driver-based framework for the company overall. Even before I got there, they were thinking about things that way, which does kind of lead to having a shared language almost with groups that are not in finance, so that they are familiar with what you're looking at, why you're coming up with this answer, and kind of how we get to decisions we make ultimately.
Pigment certainly brought a different level of data analysis to the finance team. I mean, we were always trying to build models and spreadsheets and then go from there. You can't really drill down into a cell in spreadsheets. And you're looking at a transaction list and it's just a monstrous transaction list that crashes. We know exactly what it should look like. It's just a matter of making sure that we have all the tools necessary to be able to deliver the message that we're trying to convey.
I'm not sure it has reduced stress, at least not immediate stress. Because people have the ability to see the information and to challenge it, they may get stressed out from looking at the information right away, but everybody has the opportunity to clarify or to dig into what's in front of them and eventually get comfortable with everything.
I think just by the definition of collaboration, right? You can understand what people are thinking, you can put any issues out into the open, and then you can come to a consensus, right? And consensus not always leads to decision, but most of the time it will.
I think the biggest thing there is, historically, finance teams kind of kept all of this information to themselves and then rarely shared it out. And I think there's this big transition now into providing that information to the organization as much as possible, more or less in real time.
Data democratization is key. It's important. I think at NerdWallet we've done a really good job of making sure that everyone who needs access to the data has access to the data. And that's not necessarily financial data, but from a business metrics perspective, because the more that people understand how the business is trending, the more that they can add value and they can impact that and drive the business forward and drive the business upwards.
When giving better visibility to the company, one of the benefits that I've noticed is people have higher job satisfaction. When they get access to numbers that they previously had a difficult time getting access to, they're always very grateful and very excited to be brought into the circle. And at that point, they're happier with their job. They might perform better, stick around at the company longer. And that was a benefit I didn't realize could happen. I thought they'll just have better analysis, but they actually felt more involved at that point.